Happy to join you here today. Today I'm going to talk to you about the best way to budget using psychology for our benefit. My name is Sam Jones. I'm a financial planner. I'm a certified financial planner. I'm an accredited financial counselor. I work primarily with real estate investors and business owners to help them get more out of their finances and to be able to reach their goals. Today, like I said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about cash flow. I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller here. I'm going to talk to you guys about a little bit about cash flow and budgeting. I know those are never fun topics necessarily, but crucially important to you building your long-term wealth, right? We always hear about those people that make $1 million, but they spend $1 million. And you know what? In that scenario, what does that do for you? When alternatively, right, we can make $100,000 and keep more of it, or $200,000 and keep a lot more of it, that we're good. We're going to talk about that today and the power of some of these things. Who here never feels like they have enough? I think this is a fairly common complaint or view, but I think it's common for a reason, and it's because people aren't intentional with their money and they don't have enough when the time comes. And I'm going to talk more about my friend in a minute here, but I had a friend who came to me and said, I just never have enough. I feel like I'm making good money, but I never have enough to do the things I want to do, to pay taxes, to ultimately get ahead in life, what they're trying to do, accomplish, buy some more real estate. They had some real estate goals. Never had enough. And if you compound that over 20 or 30 years, you really have a problem. I want to solve that problem. And that's what we're going to talk about today is getting past that. First things first, I think it's important to know is this video is for educational purposes only. It is not a specific or individualized tax, legal, or investment advice. Before considering acting on anything you see in this video, first consult with a tax, legal, or investment advisor. Today, I want to talk to you specifically about Parkinson's law, using psychology to help you, budgeting and cash flow, how people traditionally do it, and then how we instead can use Parkinson's law to benefit you. And then ultimately to set up systems so that you can ensure your success. And then how do we do it when we have uneven income? When we're business owners or we're, paid a lot by sales or completing jobs or flips or whatever that might be. How do we budget then? So I'm going to talk about that today. What is Parkinson's law? The first thing you might hear of is with time, right? When you're given a project, and if you're given 3 weeks to finish that project, or you're given 3 months to finish that project, you'll probably take the full 3 weeks or the full 3 months to finish that project, even though it was the same project. But the alternative is that the 3-week project is probably going to be just as good a quality as the 3-month project, and you were given you had a lot less time to do it. Parkinson's law is that we tend to consume what is in front of us. You think of a plate of food. Think of a small plate of food versus a large plate of food. When we have a small plate of food, we tend to dish up less and eat less. When we have a large plate of food, the alternative is true. We then tend to dish up more and eat more. And the same thing is true with our bank accounts, okay? Now, you might think if you're a saver, this doesn't apply to you, but it does. The same thing is true with our bank accounts. Most people tend to spend really everything that's in their bank account, and they budget using their bank account. And when introducing credit cards, now we go into the negative every month, right? But generally speaking, people tend to spend what they have. They spend what's in their bank account. Well, let me just talk about specifically with savers. You might think, I don't spend what's on my bank account. Well, guess what? That number that's in your bank account still negatively impacts you. When you have $10,000, $100,000, several $100,000 sitting in a bank account, you feel really secure and like you can spend more money. And that may not be a bad thing, but it also may be a bad thing because it may be spending it on things that's not ultimately helping you achieve your goals, right? I like the out of mind, out of sight. We're putting specific dollars to have specific jobs or tasks and then being intentional with our money, right? Not letting this huge bank balance make me feel comfortable with expenses that I might not otherwise want or need. Parkinson's law. This law says that no matter how much money people earn, they tend to spend the entire amount plus a little extra. Their expenses rise in lockstep with their incomes. No matter how much they make, there never seems to be enough. That's by the Wealthy Gardener. I got that from that book. But it's true, right? You can think about when you maybe first graduated college and how much money you were making then versus how much money you're making now. I'm sure your income has gone up if you've been graduated for more than a year or two. But guess what? Your expenses have probably gone up too, right? You tend to consume more because you're given more. This is Parkinson's law, okay? So we want to be disciplined and smart with this. I'm not saying it's bad to spend more when you make more, but let's just be intentional with it. What do people do traditionally with budgeting and budgeting tools? How do people typically keep track of their expenses? Well, the first way is typically through budgeting apps, right? They use, I know Mint was one that was really popular. It's no longer there. Wine app. There's a whole bunch out there, Every Dollar, a whole bunch out there that people use to track. And these are great apps. And if I often see Excel spreadsheets too, right? And if it's a spreadsheet or an app and you get energy out of doing that, then the more power to you. You're irregular. Most people, it's a draining activity. It isn't giving them fulfillment. And really, ultimately, I don't recommend it for most people. I think on a short-term sprint type of thing, on a month, 2 month, 3 month basis, these could be really beneficial and eye-opening. But on a long-term basis, I think ultimately it isn't the most productive use of our time. Knowing what we spend is important. I'm going to talk more about that and keeping spending under control. But more importantly, if we can do that without putting a ton of mental effort into it and ultimately have that mental effort to go make more money or to spend cherished time with family, whatever that might look like, that's going to be really beneficial. There's also credit card trackers. I know that a lot of people use these as well, and they can be beneficial too. Let me tell you about my friend. I mentioned him a little bit earlier. My friend, he makes about 12 grand a month, and he came to me a few years ago. But he came to me and said, hey, I'm making great money. I'm making about 12 grand a month, and my expenses, I've gone through them, and then we actually went through them with me, but they were about $5,000 a month, his expenses. And he desired to be saving about 7 grand. And ultimately, he could never get the results he was hoping for, right? He never felt like he had that 7 grand that he should be saving every month because he'd look at his bank account, right, every month and he'd spend. Here's what I recommended that he'd start doing and being more intentional about how to solve this problem. So he gets that first 12 grand every month. So let's take 7 of it, that money that he wants to save, and put it into a different, not his normal checking and spending accounts, but do a different savings/investment account. Then we take the $5,000 that he wants to be spending every month and we put it into his checking account. And then he spends. And guess what? Here's the power of Parkinson's law. When he runs out, he's out. Crazy concept, right? When he runs out of money, he's out of money. Let's talk about the benefits of Parkinson's law. Number one, that it works. You're given these finite amount of money, which is good, okay? I know a lot of people talk about scarcity mentality. And scarcity mentality when it comes to a lot of things is negative. But when it comes to money and our spending, having a scarcity mentality to some degree is a good thing, okay? Having bounds is a good thing. This is the digital envelope system. You think about putting cash in an envelope, spending that money throughout the month, and when that money's out in that envelope, it's gone. The same thing, we can do this with a bank account, okay? Here's what I do though. A lot of people ask me, okay, well, great, I want to spend 5 grand, but what if, I spend 5 grand and $1? I don't want to get overdraft fees, or I have a big whatever payment that I wasn't expecting, this or that, right? I don't want to get overdraft fees. So what I say is, okay, let's build a buffer, okay? So in my friend's scenario, we said, okay, let's put aside $2,000 into that checking account as that buffer. And then you'll get $5,000 in every single month. And so it'll go to 7, and throughout the month, you'll spend it down. And if you ever get below that $2,000 mark, guess what? We know that there's an issue, that you're overspending. So now you can go back to that tracking, your credit card tracker, your Excel spreadsheet, your app, whatever it is, and figure out, okay, where am I overspending and how do I fix the problem? Then once you fix the problem, then it's a pretty mindless effort. You don't have to sit and categorize every little thing. I don't care too much how much money I'm spending on gas versus groceries versus entertainment. What I care is that I'm not overspending. And that's the power of Parkinson's law and using this method. Ultimately, though, when you have a finite amount of money in an account and you can't go over that amount, right, it keeps you accountable. It keeps you accountable, which is super, super powerful and important. We need things to keep us accountable because we as humans are lazy, and it's just so easy to overspend, to overeat, to not, to do the easy thing. I'm going to talk actually for just a second about credit cards, because credit cards can derail this, right? You can overspend on your credit card and still have the money in your bank account, or not have the money in your bank account and still overspend on your credit card. So if you know you're that type of person that's going to overspend on your credit card, maybe you consider getting a debit card, right? Honestly. Or if you want to really take advantage of the credit card points, then you just be aware of your spending. Pay off your credit cards frequently and live by what's in that account. It's pretty simple. Alternatively, though, with your credit card, if you feel like you can handle it, then do it. Me and my wife use a credit card. We love it, but we pay them off frequently so we know how much money we have on a regular basis within that account. Annual expenses. How did these play into this budgeting system, and how do we account for them, right? Examples might be Christmas, vehicle registration, anniversaries, birthdays, auto repairs, vacations, big purchase items, anything really that is going to be a big item that is not expensed or not paid for on a regular schedule, a regular monthly schedule particularly. Perfect example of this is auto repairs. You don't need to get tires every month, right? Or Christmas, that happens once a year. So how do we handle this? What do we do? Well, first off, you figure out what all those annual expenses are, and then you divide it by 12. So I'm going to talk about my friend's situation, how we did it here. We figured out that his annual expenses, all those different things, was about $1,000 a month. So we took $6,000 and we put them into his investments, and he invested that money. Then we turned around and we put $1,000 into what we called his spend savings account, an account that's a savings, but we're planning on spending it when the time arises. And then alternatively, we put that $5,000 in his checking account and spend like normal. And then when one of those big annual expenses comes, instead of derailing his monthly budget, we just transfer from the spend savings over to the savings account. And that money in that spend savings account is going to ebb and flow, and there's going to be times where it's really high, the balance, and times where it's really low, and that's fine, right? As long as we're budgeting correctly, and sometimes crazy things happen. That's why we have emergency funds and reserves and things like that. But ultimately, this system works. And this is how you account for annual expenses within using Parkinson's law. How do we deal with uneven income? Let's talk about that for just a second. I know a lot of flippers, wholesalers, people that have big checks, real estate agents are included, but they get big checks all at once, and it's kind of feast and famine at different times. So how do we handle that? First things first, and this is a little bit backwards, but we put the money in the checking, right? Put the normal monthly spending in the checking. Then we put, in this scenario, we put, let's say 6 months into their spend savings account. And we can also include their other annual expenses in here, but I'm not going to talk about that for now. I'm just talking about, okay, they want 6 months of normal monthly expenses set aside for feast and famine. Flips sometimes take a while to complete. It might be a while between now and when you get your next commission check. So having some spend savings, having some money set aside is going to be super important. Lastly, then they take the remaining what's left over and put it into their investments. And then they have their money invested, right? And say they get another net big commission check next month. Well, if it was next month, then we put $5,000 in checking for expenses, and then the rest of it into their investments. But then they maybe say they go 6 months or 5 months, so they only have $5,000 left in their spend savings for their next check. Well, now we'd refill that to $30,000. We'd put their normal monthly expenses in their checking account, and then the rest we'd invest. And it's a pretty slick system. When you have uneven income, having kind of this bucket of slush money where we can fill the voids of when we have those ups and downs is really, really powerful. So this is ultimately how I recommend many of my clients use Parkinson's law, how me and my wife use Parkinson's law, and how I help my friend use Parkinson's law. This is going to be super powerful. And ultimately, it's going to help you to achieve your goals, right? Having a system in place is going to help you to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. If you don't have a system and a plan in place, you're not going to get there, right? This is the best way, in my mind, to spend and to save and to budget. And if you're able to use this without having to put a lot of mental effort into it, now you can go figure out how to spend more time and be mentally present with your family, how to spend more time earning more money, doing the things that are important. If we're going to have a financial plan and follow this system in place, we're going to have savings to go towards our financial goals, which is going to be extremely powerful. Again, my name is Sam Jones. I'm a financial planner. I would love to help you with setting up Parkinson's law, setting up a cash flow system that works for you. I would love to help you. Feel free to reach out. There is going to be a scheduling link in the comments below. Feel free to schedule with me if you want any help there. Ultimately, though, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. We don't have systems in place to help us ensure that we're saving and not spending everything. Chances are we're going to spend more than we want to. And that's what we're trying to avoid here.